G'day, I'm Paul. We have so many car brands coming to Australia. One of the latest that is going to be coming is called Jaecoo. So it's part of the onslaught of Chinese brands that are coming to take on competitors like the Toyota RAV4, Mazda CX-5. So there's going to be a lot of variety to choose from. We're in South Africa driving a new version of the Jaecoo J7. It's a plug-in hybrid. This is coming to Australia later this year. We don't know the full details or the pricing just yet, but today I'm going to give you as much information as we can today. We're going to go for a drive in this as well. And we're also taking part in a fuel economy challenge that I'll run you through in a second. If you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this video, you can use the time codes that are on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, you can scroll down and use the chapters below. Okie dokie, so let's talk about exterior design first. So this is around the size of a RAV4, so mid-size SUV. In terms of the other plug-in hybrid competitors in this segment, we're talking about the Sea Lion 6, we're talking about Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid. It's that sort of vehicle, around a similar size of battery as well. It sits around the 20 kilowatt hour mark in terms of how much capacity you're going to get. So Jaecoo sits under the Chery umbrella. There's a lot of Chinese brands that have all of these sub-brands, and this is kind of like a premium version of that Chery brand. So down the front here, you've got this vertical slatted grille. This plug-in hybrid is front-wheel drive. There is an all-wheel drive version coming, and it's probably going to need it, and I'll run you through why that is later on. LED headlights down the front here, so you've got the sort of indicator and running beam up the top there, and then the main headlights down the bottom there. Around the side here, got these eco tyres sitting on 19-inch alloy wheels, and that sort of alloy wheel design has an eco finish to it as well to I guess reduce the amount of resistance you have as wind catches that. You've got wheel arch protection there. Given that this is available as an all-wheel drive, I've seen marketing material of this in the sand and stuff like that. Obviously, you're not going to be doing much off-roading in this, given that it is front-wheel drive. And even in the all-wheel drive version, I don't think it's really catered for off-road driving, especially given that it doesn't have a huge amount of ground clearance either at around 200 millimeters. Now, around the side here, you've got indicator built into the wing mirror, 360 camera. You can see Australia down the side there. So part of this fuel economy challenge is trying to achieve 1,200 kilometers, which is what this vehicle is capable of doing if you look at the figures on paper. That is an incredible distance to be able to do out of a petrol vehicle like this. So I'll be keen to see how that goes. I'm keen to see as well how the hybrid system interacts once it empties, because you're only getting around sort of 90 kilometers of range out of this as a full electric drive. Once you exceed that, you're going to be running as a hybrid, and it's going to have to then manage charging the battery and discharging it as you drive. Okay, so around the back of the car, you've got LED tail lights all the way along the back there, Jaecoo branding over here, and a diffuser down the bottom there as well. Sort of pretty tidy design, and the design of the vehicle itself actually looks really good. I know styling is subjective, but it sort of is that next generation of Chery styling. If you look at stuff like the Emotive 5 in Australia, kind of still looks a bit sort of old school Chery styling, whereas this certainly has a lot of that new design vibe, and it just looks really impressive on the road. Turns a lot of heads, so I'll be keen to see how it goes in Australia. And they've also thought about stuff like hiding that wiper up the top there as well, integrated within that spoiler, which is pretty good. Now, in terms of your charging, so you have both AC and DC charging. DC charging up to 40 kilowatts, AC charging up to 6.6 kilowatts, vehicle to load as well. So it's a proper sort of fully complemented plug-in hybrid system. All right, let's jump inside, run you through what the cabin looks like, and then we'll hit the road. Righto, so we're inside the J7 PHEV. I'm just going to run you through the high-level stuff here. When we do get this back in Australia, we'll do a proper detailed review of this so you can get a better feel for it. But this looks really impressive. So I mentioned before, we don't know exact pricing just yet. We do know that the regular J7, so the internal combustion version, is going to be priced at around the sort of $40,000 mark drive away. They're thinking that this is going to be under $50,000 or thereabouts drive away. I don't know what spec we're getting in Australia, but if it looks anything like this, I mean, that is going to be the bargain of the century, given that you've got a screen here that's over 13 inches in size with really decent infotainment system, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all the sort of features you'd expect it to have, inbuilt navigation. It really is just a good infotainment system that's easy to use on the move, which is good. Unfortunately, no physical buttons for stuff like climate controls, and it is quite frustrating if you are in smartphone mirroring to have to then go out of smartphone mirroring and go into the climate controls to change settings, because it just is a little bit fiddly. Head of the driver, another screen there as well to give you critical information, and then a head-up display as well. So fair bit of stuff there. Wireless phone charging, lots of storage too. Cooled center console. They have thought about everything here, and it is a really sort of decent looking interior. They have other color options available globally here for the South African market, so I don't know if we'll get those in Australia. But if we can, I mean, you're getting then darker brown coloured interiors to match these heated and cooled seats. So they really have crammed in as much as they can. Second row, we spent a bit of time getting chauffeured around in the second row as well, and there is loads of room back there. So you've got adjustments for the seats, heaps of leg and head room, toe room. It doesn't feel as cramped in the second row as something like a CX-5, so there is enough room there to stretch out. And as a family vehicle, it's sort of fairly ideal. Luggage space as well, pretty surprised by that. We had 2 giant suitcases plus another pair of suitcases on top of it, easily fit in there. So big enough to do your day-to-day stuff. It even has the ability to convert your cargo blind into a projector screen, which I thought was quite a sort of cool innovation there to sort of keep the kids happy if you're out on the road. But let's switch this on, we'll go for a drive and we'll see what it's like behind the wheel. Okay, so we have just hit the road in the J7 plug-in hybrid. So let's talk about the drivetrain first. So it is basically the engine that is the go-to for a lot of Chinese market cars. 1.5 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine. That mates to an electric motor and this 18.3 kilowatt hour battery to give you a plug-in hybrid. Now it's interesting because it can work as a series hybrid, parallel hybrid, can run on EV only mode. It has a deep discharge EV mode as well. As we learnt with the Shark, if you really sort of get stuck into energy use, you are limited at some point in terms of your battery drain. And this is the same, but what they've done is allowed you to go further into that discharge range to get you more range. And that's because they're targeting a 1,300 kilometre drive cycle, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. That is what was reserved previously for efficient diesels, whereas now being able to get that out of a small petrol engine plus a battery, I think is a pretty impressive setup. There is a caveat though, and I should mention as well that we're filming this at the end of our economy challenge, so we have done 1,200 kilometres to a tank. It is achievable, but given it was a challenge, we had to drive quite gently, and some of the other countries that are here, we're doing crazy stuff like 60 k's an hour in an 80 zone or 100 zone to achieve those numbers, whereas we sort of just went, no, let's just drive normally. And driving normally, we're able to achieve some pretty impressive figures there, which is what makes this feel like an actual genuine fuel efficient car, even when the battery runs out, because we haven't charged the battery at all. Now, what does all that feel like behind the wheel? It's interesting. If you are sort of going sort of fairly slow and you stand on the throttle, you get a nice surge of torque. It's 255 kilowatts of power, over 500 newton meters of torque, but it's front wheel drive. And that presents a couple of issues if you nail it from a standing start. It has a fair bit of torque steer and you need to be on top of it. It's not crazy, but to combat that torque steer, they've given the steering a fairly light feel. And as a result of that, you don't really get a great deal of feel through the steering wheel. They've got a slow return to center, so when you're pulling out of a street or something like that, it is really slow to come back to center, and I think this is all stuff they've had to dial in to combat the amount of torque steer that you're going to get with this type of power. In terms of 0 to 100 times, Jaecoo claims a number of about sort of 8.5 seconds, so it is sort of fairly quick. Won't pull your face off, but it is fairly quick. The other car that's here that we haven't had a chance to drive and hasn't been confirmed for Australia yet, we've got monkeys running across the road here, is the C9 plug-in hybrid. That is a tri-motor plug-in hybrid, and it makes like 1,000 newton meters of torque or something like that. And that is a performance vehicle and has torque on the rear, which means it doesn't have that level of torque steer. So it'd be pretty exciting if that came to Australia. Now let's talk about ride and handling. It's a little bit tricky to gauge because the roads here along the Western Cape of South Africa are fantastic, really well maintained, very smooth. So on these roads, it's great. We've actually done some gravel road driving as well, and that was some fairly serious stuff in terms of potholes and corrugations, and it seemed to handle that well also, which means it has a softer suspension tune. When we do get this in Australia, we'll take it to the proving ground and run it through our standard tests, and I'll be keen to understand whether it has that same feel behind the wheel once we do test it back home. In terms of road noise, it's all sort of fairly okay. Coarse chip roads, it does seem to come into the cabin quite a bit. You really don't hear a lot out of the engine, even when you sort of get stuck into it. Really doesn't make a great deal of sound. It's really quick to respond, gets up and moves, but it doesn't make a racket inside the car. So they've done a good job there in terms of suppressing the amount of noise that comes out of that engine bay. Okay, so that has been your first look at the Jaecoo J7 plug-in hybrid. We're going to be driving the internal combustion version really soon. and we're going to be driving the plug-in hybrid version when it does finally arrive in Australia this year. We don't know the pricing yet, but like I said, it is going to be around hopefully that $50,000 mark, which means it represents some really good value for money. And I'm excited to have a proper drive of it back home. So if you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it and you share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. But until next time, take it easy.